What's up YouTube, this is Buck with Buck and Chuck Gaming, and today we're going to be talking about the roller coaster ride that has been the Crash Bandicoot franchise. If you guys would, please give us a like, share, and subscribe. It definitely helps out the channel. We always appreciate it. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Crash has seen a lot of highs and lows through the years. He's been at the top of the industry as a mascot for Sony, but much like the jorts he wears, he nearly hit rock bottom just a few short years later. However, Crash and his jorts couldn't be stopped so easily and rose from the dead like a phoenix. Today, I'll be covering the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows. We take a look at the rise and fall and then rise again of the Crash Bandicoot franchise. Crash started as the brainchild of Jason Rubin and Andy Gavin of Naughty Dog Studios in 1994. Naughty Dog was signed by Sony and tasked with creating a 3D platform for the system in spirit of 16-bit greats like the Sonic the Hedgehog series, Super Mario World, and my personal favorite of the three, Donkey Kong Country. In September 94, they started a character design of what would become Crash. After the first draft, Crash was going to be called, and get called, just listen to this, Willy the Wombat. Can you imagine yearning for the next Willy game? I can just see Willy the Wombat rocking some khaki cargo pants and full of that 90s attitude. Now that I think about it, that might be kind of cool. They eventually settled on the crazy Bandicoot we know and love today. Sorry, Willy. One of the most memorable parts of the first Crash release was the great marketing behind it. It became almost an instant hit when it launched on September 9th, 1996. I still remember the commercials to this day. Had a person in a full mascot like Crash suit going around to Sega and Nintendo's headquarters and calling them out on a megaphone. My 9-year-old self thought this was about the coolest thing ever, and right then I was immediately sold. Jumping over to the game itself, Crash Bandicoot released overall positive reviews, with popular publications at the time like EGM giving it the coveted Game of the Month award. The game itself played well with tight controls and a good mix of 2D and 3D platforming. It's also the first game I remember having levels you would actually run away from obstacles, like the boulders like you saw on this level here, and run toward the camera. I thought these levels were absolutely epic at the time, and it's the first game that came out I can remember, like I said, that demonstrated that. It was new, it was refreshing, and it was one of the reasons the original Crash really stood out among its peers. I think it's also important to point out the mainstream appeal Crash had. My wife, who didn't really play video games, grew up with two series and she still loves both the series to this day. She grew up with Crash and Spyro. And Crash just has that ability to connect with the non-gamers out there, which is a rare feat for a game or a series to accomplish. And when you can get that, you can get the, call it the non-gamer, the casual audience in there, then, I mean, the game has really gone mainstream and you got a huge global hit. As I talked about before, the original Crash Bandicoot was a huge hit for Sony, selling 6.8 million units worldwide, making it the 8th best-selling PS1 game, and making him essentially the mascot for the Sony PlayStation. Of course, with all this success, there had to be a sequel, and Naughty Dog was more than up to the task. Crash 2: Cortex Strikes Back is just that sequel. And just like Empire Strikes Back was for Star Wars, Cortex Strikes Back is looked at by many as the high point of the franchise. It's released on November 5th, 1997. It added a very handy slide to Crash's arsenal, which allowed him to do a longer jump and open up the platforming possibilities. That, combined with fantastic level design, made this another standout hit for our star Bandicoot. Naughty Dog then looked to cap off its trilogy in outstanding fashion when it released Crash Bandicoot Warped on Halloween, October 31st, 1998. Crash 3 is my personal favorite of the PlayStation trilogy, and my favorite overall Crash game in general. It gave Coco, Crash's sister, a more prominent role, as well as adding riding levels featuring the adorable baby bear and baby tiger. Crash 3 again sold like gangbusters. All three of the mainline Crash games on PS1 sold at least 5 million units, and all fall within the 15 best-selling PlayStation 1 games of all time, which is an extremely impressive feat. Naughty Dog just kept the hits coming after Crash 3 when they released CTR, otherwise known as Crash Team Racing. It's a Mario Kart-esque kart racer that many people believe actually surpasses the juggernaut at the time that was Mario Kart 64. It's another hit and sold over 2 million units, and with all that momentum, what could possibly go wrong? There may not be one definitive answer on this, but the exceptional team at Naughty Dog moving on to the Jak and Daxter series certainly didn't help Crash. The next game to come out in the series was Crash Bash, which was essentially a Mario Party clone. It was released in 2000, and while it was still a commercial hit, it sold almost 2 million units. It was a critical flop. It was developed by Eurocom Developments and featured uninspired and often, in my opinion, boring minigames. This was a misstep, but Crash still had legions of adoring fans waiting to see what a next-gen Crash would actually look like. And we actually found out when Crash Bandicoot The Wrath of Cortex was released in 2001. This would also mark the first time a Crash game would not be found exclusively on a Sony console. Wrath of Cortex would actually come out on Xbox and GameCube as well as the PS2. Wrath of Cortex was developed by Traveler's Tales and released to middling reviews, having only 62% on the GameCube version on Metacritic, and the game overall was labeled just uninspired and generic. I mean, I did play it myself. Again, it's not a terrible game, but certainly not up to Naughty Dog's quality of the Crash games that they'd been releasing before. This was Strike 2 for Crash and his adoring fans, and now shrinking fan base. After a couple Game Boy Advance spin-offs, Crash came back to consoles with Crash Nitro Kart. It was essentially a sequel to CTR, which would again receive just okay middle-of-the-road reviews, but certainly didn't live up to the legacy of Crash Team Racing. Okay, fast forward just a little bit further, and it's now been 6 years since Warped came out, and Crash was looking for a home run to bring the series back to prominence with Crash Twin Sanity that got released in 2004. Instead of this being a home run, it was another uninspired platformer with a Metacritic average of only 65%, and this was essentially Strike 3. After not having a mainline hit for 6 years, Crash essentially missed out on a whole generation of kids who were left wondering what all the hype was about. These were just middle-of-the-road, generic games, the PS2, GameCube, Xbox era, the kids that grew up in that time that didn't experience the original trilogy that Naughty Dog made that came out on PS1. Crash continued to release uninspired efforts until 2010 when the series went silent, and many thought it might even be dead. But then, after 7 years away, Crash came back in a big way. In a very smart marketing move, Activision, who now has the rights to Crash, waited until gamers that grew up with Crash in the 90s became nostalgic for him and then released the Insane Trilogy, which is a remaster of the Naughty Dog Crash trilogy. After 7 years, the world was hungry for Crash, and Vicarious Visions gave the original 3 a fresh coat of paint. That proved to be a genius strategy that paid off in spades. The Insane Trilogy has sold over 10 million copies as of February 2019, and the Bandicoot is riding high again. To capitalize off that, Activision then had Crash Team Racing remastered and just announced that Toys for Bob is developing Crash 4 It's About Time, which, I mean, is a fitting name if I do say so myself, and it'll be released in October 2020. That's right, they're acting like all the other games after Crash 3 Warp didn't even happen. I'm definitely excited to see what ideas Toys for Bob brings to the table after they previously worked on the fantastic Spyro Reignited trilogy. They did a really great job with that, so I'm excited to see what they can do with Crash 4. And that just about brings us up to date on the rise, the fall, and the rise again of Crash Bandicoot. And thanks a lot for watching, guys. I appreciate all the views, the subs, the comments, the likes, everything like that helps our channel out tremendously. I'll try and deliver more content like this for you in the future. And I'll be back with a new, like I said, review retrospective, top 5, top 10 list here soon. And I definitely appreciate everything, guys. Thanks a lot. And I'll go ahead and leave you with some of my Crash 3 fails here. So enjoy. Thanks, guys.